Hey everybody, Hoosier Jedi here with another review for you. And this time I'm going to be doing a review of all things, a fan film. But this is no ordinary fan film. This film was financed and stars, known Hollywood actor Thomas Jane. And in this film, for legal reasons, he can't quite out and out spell out the character he's playing, but it's heavily implied to be Frank Castle, aka the Punisher. Now, if you're familiar with Thomas Jane or just the Punisher in general, you know that back in 2004, I believe it was, Thomas Jane starred in a live action Punisher movie that, frankly, didn't go over well with fans or the critics. And honestly, I really can't lay any of the blame, too much of the blame for that on Thomas Jane. He did do a pretty decent job as Frank Castle, but there's no denying that the story was definitely a little bit on the weak side. And given that, and looking at this movie, I can't help but feel that this was Thomas Jane's way of saying, if I had full control of what was going on, this is what I would do with a Punisher movie. And again, to be fair to Thomas Jane, when the 2004 Punisher movie was made, there was a lot of pretty good information floating around online that heavily suggested that the executives were screwing with things. The most notable example being that the story, instead of being set in New York City, where so many Punisher stories are, it was changed to Florida. And the people who made the movie even said, we did that just because it would be cheaper to film in Florida than to film in New York. Now, folks, I love me some Punisher. I mean, look, right here. My much beloved Punisher hoodie. I've even been lucky enough to meet famed Punisher writer Garth Ennis one time. So, again, let me restate that I absolutely love the Punisher. So, when just by chance this morning I happened to stumble across this video while I was poking around on the internet, I definitely just could not resist checking it out. And honestly, if this is Thomas Jane's way of saying, let me make a Punisher movie and give me real control over it, and I'll make a good Punisher movie, boy, oh boy, folks, does he ever make a good case. Now, and I don't mean this as a knock against the Ray Stevenson Punisher movie, which honestly I found to be generally pretty forgettable. But Ray Stevenson is a fantastic actor. I loved him. He was phenomenal as Titus Pullo on Rome. And honestly, and I don't even mean it any kind of disrespect to the Punisher movie from the 80s starring Dolph Lundgren. That movie had its flaws as well, but there were also a lot of good moments in there. And honestly, Dolph Lundgren is a pretty impressive guy in many ways. If you're not familiar with the fact that this guy is a certified chemical engineer, he speaks like 5 languages, and is just an insane martial arts badass. But anyway, all that said, this is, to me, the best live action rendition of the Punisher that has ever been done. And the really amazing thing is that this movie is only about 10 minutes long. And I guess it just really goes to show you that the Punisher really is a very simple character. Not that he isn't a character with depth, not that he isn't an interesting character. It's just that you don't really need to do a whole lot of fancy stuff in order to tell a good Punisher story, or, if this video is any evidence, to make a good Punisher movie. On the other hand, Thomas Jane is pretty clearly no fool, seeing as how he went out and got none other than Ron Perlman to appear in this movie in a small but rather important role. Now, Ron Perlman is hardly a stranger to comic book fans or comic book movies. Of course, he's known as the live-action Hellboy and was the voice of Slade on Teen Titans back from a few years ago. And Ron Perlman just has an absolutely astonishingly good geeky resume. And he's certainly in fine form in this movie. Now, I'm not going to talk too much about the story for this movie. And I don't want to really talk about some of the controversial aspects of this that I've been seeing from fan reactions. Not because I don't think that those things aren't worth discussing. It's just, how to put this? Honestly, I don't really think that I could discuss the issues that people have had with this movie. And just to make it clear, the main ones are the Punisher is a white guy and he fights a gang consisting of black people, and that some pretty brutal and unpleasant things happen to a prostitute. So I've seen the words racism and misogyny thrown around in these fan discussions more than once. Now, if you've watched enough of my other videos, you know my opinion on exactly how productive discussions of racism and misogyny and things like that tend to go over on the internet. And if you've not seen those, my opinion is those arguments always end up pretty much, in usually in very short order, going straight to hell, with people throwing around a lot of accusations and insults at other people. Some of them occasionally justified, the vast majority of them questionably justified. In other words, folks, it's just the usual people being people on the internet. And it's just a shame that serious and important issues like that, as they affect our society, that we can't really bring ourselves, especially online, to discuss them in a mature and adult, and most of all, respectful way. It On the internet, it just really seems to be almost a crime to disagree with someone. And if you disagree with someone on a social issue, especially one that's really thorny like racism or misogyny, it's extraordinarily easy for people to want to just put you in the bad guy corner, slap a whole bunch of labels on you, and blah, 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 blah. Well, folks, as I've said, I've been in those discussions and I've seen them go straight to hell many times. And that's not what my YouTube channel is about. I'm doing these videos because I find this to be fun, and I want to share things that are fun and interesting with you. So, in regards to the whole racism and misogyny thing, in regards to this movie, all I can say is please watch the film and then make up your own mind. Beyond that, I am going to, for my own sanity, offer no further comment. Now, with that said, what we're looking at here in terms of Frank Castle as a character is a Frank Castle that has clearly not become the Punisher yet. He even makes a comment to Ron Perlman's character that he's only been on the wagon for 6 months. And when we see Frank, he is literally sleeping in his van. So I kind of get the impression that this is meant to be Frank in some sort of listless limbo that he experienced between the time that his family died and the time that he became the Punisher in full-fledged fashion. And what this film really is not about Frank becoming the Punisher, but it is about Frank taking that first big step on the path to becoming the Punisher. And despite this movie being 10 minutes, we do get to see a decent amount of character growth from Frank. When we see him, he's, as I said, just in this listless, ennui, malze limbo. And he even stands by, like so many people in this world would, and so many people in this world do, when he sees something genuinely, truly horrible starting to happen to another person. But his just, and I really don't like to go this where his just apathy towards life in general and other people is so great that he just stands by and let this terrible thing happen. But when things escalate and it looks like something really horrible is going to happen to a kid, that's enough to finally shake Frank out of his funk, to step in and to start doing something about it. Now, it is well established that one of the things that you can do to really, really piss off the Punisher is hurt children. Now, granted, the Punisher also has a very long history of exceptional taking serious exception to people who abuse women. If you've ever read one of the most famous and easily the most brutal Punisher story ever, it was written by Garth Ennis. It's called The Slavers, and it's basically the Punisher versus a human slave trafficking organization. Yeah, you will see that. I mean, the Punisher even says, it's been a long time since I've hated anyone as much as I hate these people. And when you consider some of the people that the Punisher has tangled with over the years, that's saying a lot. But anyway, coming back to it, this movie is basically about Frank realizing that for all his pain, for as divorced as he is emotionally and spiritually from the world, that there is some part of him that still cares. And there is some part of him that, when push comes to shove, will stand up, will say no, and will strike back. And this movie also does the great job of reminding us that the Punisher is not Daredevil. He's not Spider-Man. He's not Captain America. He is a character who is not about justice. The Punisher is about punishment. He is about seeing that people get what they deserve. He's that Old Testament, old-timey, eye for an eye style of judgment and punishment that seems at times so out of place in our modern world, but also at times seems like something that we so desperately need. Anyway, the action in this movie is, well, brutal is a little bit of an understatement. I mean, this is right up there with some of the really, no holds barred, no pulled, no punches John Woo movies from Hong Kong. And yeah, it is not shy about going the brutal route, about blood and broken bones and people dying horribly and just horrible, violent things happening to people. And honestly, folks, that's what a good Punisher story needs. The Punisher, now, not that I don't enjoy the more fantastic, the Punisher interacting with the Marvel Universe stories. I actually genuinely really love those. But I also love the more grounded in reality, very brutal, basic, the very Garth Ennis flavor style of Punisher stories as well. And at the end of the day, I have to say that if you're going to do this sort of thing live action, that's the route to go. And this movie does that, as I said, better than any of the live action studio Punisher movies have ever done. And unless the Marvel decides to do the smart thing and let Thomas Jane have another crack at it, it's probably going to be the best Punisher movie that we ever get. So, with that said, I'm going to start wrapping this up. So, yeah, there are some aspects of this movie that may bother people, that may offend them, that may upset them. Again, I urge you to watch this film and make up your own mind. And honestly, if I can get up on a soapbox for a minute, I urge you to do that in real life too, to basically, as much as you can, don't let other people tell you what your opinion should be. Make an informed opinion, form an informed opinion on your own. Don't take what I say, don't take what some celebrity says, don't take what your friend says as gospel. Always, always make up your own mind. Okay, soapbox time over. Now, as I said, there are some aspects of this film that may make some people uncomfortable. Decide for yourself. But for me, this was really a taste of everything that I think that I could ever want from a Punisher movie. I've got to give a lot of credit to Thomas Jane for paying for this out of his own pocket and doing this for really what can really only be described as his own genuine love for Frank Castle and the Punisher. And hey, one more really awesome thing that Ron Perlman has done. So yeah, folks, if you like The Punisher, check this movie out. I think it's worth 10 minutes of your time. That said, as always, please comment, rate, and subscribe. You can, of course, follow me on Twitter at Hoosier Jedi. And stay tuned. I've got a lot of reviews coming for you this week. So until next time, take care, folks, and have a good one.